Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Regular viewers of my channel know that I have a thing in my heart for Chrysler turbine cars. In fact, I've got a Chrysler turbine car model there on the set. I wrote a book about the Chrysler turbine car program. And if you want to know more about that, there's a documentary on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description below the video that Haggerty Foundation put together about the entire program. But part of that story tells how Jay Leno has a turbine car and the engine in his turbine car failed. And that was 2-3 years ago that his engine failed. And so he got his car back yesterday, and I was there, and I got some really, really good footage of it. In fact, I'm going to kick things off by shutting my mouth for about 38 seconds so you can see and hear Jay Leno driving off in his turbine car. So in case you're curious about what was going on there, you'll see all kinds of camera crews and stuff documenting this. WDIV, Channel 4 out of Detroit was there. Jay himself was filming it, I believe, for his own Jay Leno's Garage Productions. And then Williams was documenting it. Well, Williams International is the company that fixed the engine in Jay's car. And it's important to understand this, that Williams International was founded by Sam Williams. Dr. Williams worked at Chrysler. He was one of the champions of that program who said, hey, we can take turbine engines, downsize them, and put them in cars and make them work. And so that program got a car on the road, I believe, in 1953. And then they developed the cars over a period of years, and eventually they put out a fleet of 55 of these bronze-colored cars, and they lent a bunch of them to the public as a big publicity stunt. So a lot of people remember those cars being on the road in the mid-'60s, and Jay Leno even talks about in the documentary how he saw one of those cars at the New York World's Fair as a young teenager, and it made quite an impression on him. So later in life, when he had the opportunity to get his hands on one, he got himself one. And like all the other cars in his collection, he drives it from time to time. And he was driving it one day, and the engine failed. And keep in mind, the car was built in early 1960s. So they weren't really intending them to be driven for 60 more years. Chrysler did round up 46 of them and destroy them. They kept a few for themselves, and the rest went to museums. And so many of the ones that are in museums don't run. They just sit there and look pretty. Static display. Of the 9 survivors, only 5 of them run. And one of those is Jay Leno's as of now because it's running again. And so here's the thing. I'm wearing a shirt today. Very rarely do my shirts coordinate with the topic of what I'm talking about. But this says Project Blue Jay. And so if you watch the documentary, you'll catch this. But just a brief summary. When the engine in his car failed, I told Jay, what you should probably do is contact my brother at Williams International because my brother works there. And if anybody can fix that car, it's them. Because when Sam Williams started his own company, Williams International, making turbine engines, a lot of the people from Chrysler followed him. And then when they shut down the turbine program, a bunch more followed him. So all of the knowledge and know-how that had been at Chrysler was transferred over to Williams. Now, many of the guys have retired because this is a long time ago we're talking. That car was built. But, a lot of that knowledge did get passed along. So Williams decided to do this and agreed to do this. And so it was a while, 3 years. And they basically did it on the notion that they were going to ask people, can we get volunteers? And the volunteers will be working on their own time, weekends, nights, whatever it might take to get this thing running. And Jay understood that was going to take some time, but he knew these guys are doing this, like that volunteer nature. They had over 100 people. Over 100 people volunteered. And another really cool thing is along the way, they actually got some of the old timers who'd retired from Chrysler years ago to step back in and say, yeah, you guys need some expertise and some of our memories. We're happy to help. And so in the documentary that Haggerty put out, there's at least 3 of these old time guys who stepped in and helped. And these are all amazing people because they worked in this car so long ago. And to them, it's like, hey, cool, we get to work on it again. So over 100 people were working on this. And so Jay's in California, Williams International is in Michigan. He shipped the engine to those guys. I've got a photograph someplace of my brother standing next to a big crate that we believe holds the engine into Jay's car. And then there were some other parts that Jay had. In fact, he actually had some spare parts for an engine. And then later on, he shipped them the car. For a period of time, there was a place in Williams inside the building where behind all kinds of security and stuff, you could look in and there was Jay Leno's Chrysler Turbine car all glassed off. It's pretty cool. So anyways, they had that and they were working on it. So they had to take the engine apart, get the parts out of it that were messed up, and do what they could to either fix them or replace them. Some of that was not hard for guys who work on turbine engines for a living. Some of it, however, was outdated technology that they had to kind of redo. But when they were done, they had this thing, the engine, on a stand, and they would roll it outside and with all kinds of stuff connected to it and instrumentation. They'd fire it up and get it running, and they did that. And then, of course, they had to dial it in, get everything working just right. There were a couple minor issues they had trying to figure out, what is going wrong now, what's going on. And one of the cool things about this car is that when you get in this car and go to start it, you literally just hit the key and it starts right up. And the start process is so easy, but Chrysler had to do that because they wanted to lend these cars to the public. And to toss the keys to a car to somebody who doesn't work for the company and go, hey, just drive it for a couple months and bring it back when you're done. That car better be ready for prime time. And it was. So they got it to where it ran exactly as it did when it was brand new for the most part. Then they put it back in the car, got it all dialed in, and they just got this all taken care of right before the Dream Cruise. So the Dream Cruise was Saturday, August 17th in Detroit. It's a huge, huge car event. All kinds of people show up there, and Williams had a private party. And they said at the party for the employees and retirees and family and friends, Jay Leno's going to be there, and he's going to be getting back his turbine car. Well, interestingly, the weather was not cooperating. And so there were threats of thunderstorms. And so they weren't sure if they were going to actually take the car to the Dream Cruise or not. So they actually decided, let's do something in front of the building here at Williams because that's where the car was. And so that's where you see the drive-off with Jay and Greg Williams, who's in the car with him, is Sam Williams' son. And he now runs the company. So it's kind of cool that his dad helped develop this car, and then he's the one who ran the company when they restored and rescued this car. And so they did this thing at Williams, and of course, local television station was there. Jay's production company was there. All kinds of people there documenting it. I was lucky enough to be invited to watch this, and I shot some film myself. And so the interesting thing is the weather cleared up, and they had been saying thunderstorms all morning. And they actually changed the forecast mid-morning and said thunderstorms not until the afternoon. So they said, tell you what, we'll fire this thing up. Jay and Greg are going to drive it over to the Dream Cruise location, which is just about, 3, 4, 5 miles away from Williams. And sure enough, ran over there, and right around noontime, Jay rolls in. I guess Jay stopped by a Chrysler display of some sort and showed them that he had his car back on the road. And then he pulled it up into the Williams picnic up at the north end of the Dream Cruise. And a lot of the people who were there were the volunteers who'd worked on the project. And I met, because I was there also, I met so many people that worked on this car. Again, weekends, evenings, in their, in essence, spare time. And I talked to guys who did, and it's interesting talking to engineers too when they talk about a project like this. So I go, what did you do on this project? And they, your brother brought me this part. It needed to be measured a certain way and figure this out. And you don't think about this stuff. You think, oh, it's a car. Pop the hood, yank a part out, throw a new part in, and close the hood, right? No. This is a whole different thing. So when they got the engine repaired and running, then of course they got to put it in the car. And interestingly, Williams does a lot of turbine technology and jet engines for aircraft and other utilizations. But they don't have a car hoist on the facility because they don't work on cars. So my good friend Mark Lieberman of Nostalgic Motoring, his business is not far from Williams. And I called up Mark one day and said, hey, Mark, any chance you might be interested in helping out with this Project Blue J? And he goes, I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. And so at one point in time, the car got moved over to Mark's place. The engine got sent over there. And Mark married the two together. And a couple days later, they could fire it up and drive it. And that was pretty cool. And so then a couple days after that, Greg Williams came over to Mark's place, and they fired the car up, drove it back to Williams, and they had it there for when Jay came into town Saturday morning, and so Jay got his car back. So it was a pretty cool thing. And, I've known about this project the entire time. I've mentioned it a few times in different videos. And, of course, it's in the documentary. But the sad part is the documentary was shot a while back and had to end with they're working on this car. They're optimistic they'll get it running. The end. And it's like we need that last chapter, right? And so this is the last chapter. And so the last chapter is Jay showed up on Saturday morning, got the keys, said a few nice words to the cameras, talked to Greg Williams quite a bit. And you have to understand that this is not something that would have been easy or even possible for, there's not a lot of places, not a lot of people, not a lot of entities on earth that could have done this. It's that unusual of a situation. So they got the car running. Jay's got it. And like I said before, Jay saw one of the turbine cars at the World's Fair in New York when he was a teenager. And he talks about that impression that he got seeing that car there. So there's been some nice articles in a variety of different organizations out there. The Detroit Free Press ran a really nice article, and that's the paper I delivered as a young man. I also know it got covered in the Detroit News, some TV stations, WDIV, and so on. And it was just really, really cool. And so, you go to Woodward Dream Cruise. I go there every single year, and you see all kinds of cars and car-related stuff, automotive stuff, and motorcycles even, just all kinds of stuff, And it was so cool for that to be the occasion where Jay got his car back. And so Jay drove it into the Williams the Williams show there. And then, interestingly, as dark clouds started to arrive, Jay left, and I saw my brother walking around taking care of some stuff. And I go, hey, dude, what's going on? He goes, we're about to take the car back to Williams because we're going to get it out of here before it starts raining too hard. And there was some bad stuff coming. So he took down all the stanchions, I guess that's what they're called, from around, the velvet ropes. They took down the thing around where the car was parked, fired the car up, and drove off with it. And Greg Williams at the wheel this time. My brother was a passenger in the car at that time. But the car does run. And it took a while, but it took over 100 volunteers at Williams International, and also the help of people along the way like Mark Lieberman. And I'm just going to tell you that I would hear these stories my brother would tell me about different people who helped along the way. And he needed some metal. And I forgot what kind of metal it was, what was special about it. But he needed some metal on very short notice of a specific kind of metal. And he started to call around his friends. And one of his friends goes, I know who can get you that metal. In fact, the guy's got some right now. He'll send you. And the guy's name is Jim. And Rick calls the guy, and the guy goes, yeah, I'll send it to you right away. I'd love to help out in this project. And the guy's got a company called Metal Tech, and they're in Wisconsin, apparently. So I was at the car show yesterday up at Williams, And I'm talking to a bunch of people, and somebody goes, oh, hey, here's Steve Lehto. This is Rick's brother, but he wrote the book on the turbine car. And this guy goes, oh, do you know what this is? And he hands me this. And I go, yeah, that's the hood ornament off a turbine car. He goes, well, it's not an actual hood ornament. He goes, but it is a recreation. It's in metal. It's it's something we made. And he goes, I just thought it'd be fun to make a couple. So he made a few of them, and he gave one to Jay. And he had another one in his hands. And I said, how would I go about getting one of those? I think it's really cool. And he hands it back to me, and he goes, there, that's how you get one. So I got to thank Jim. I said, Jim, that's going to be on my set tomorrow. So just look for it. And I suspect it's going to be over my right shoulder because that's where the turbine car is. So that little tiny thing there is that thing right there, just in a different scale. So it was an amazing story. It had a happy ending. And it's one of those things. I love those cars. I love the turbine cars. And like I said, there's 9 of them left in the world, but only 5 of them run. And so if you want to see one, for instance, this is one of the Peterson museums, one of the Smithsonian. Henry Ford in Detroit's got one. The Stahl Museum in New Baltimore's got one. Chrysler's got a couple left over that they have. One in the St. Louis Museum of Transportation. And I've got to mention Mike, Turbine Mike at the St. Louis Museum of Transportation. He is the guardian of their turbine car. And he's the one who got theirs running. Because when they got it, it wasn't running. He got it running. And he's kept it running all these years. And there were occasions when my brother would have a question. And he'd say things like, I have a question about something on the engine. Can you go and stand in front of yours and help me figure this stuff out? And of course, the guy was extremely helpful, including sending parts up when there's a time crunch. And it's like, hey, look, we could make this part, but if somebody had one, and so there were people who helped out that way also. So things like this are only accomplished with a lot of people coming together. And like I said, over 100 people at Williams alone, and then Mark Lieberman at Nostalgia Motors, Jim Myers at Metal Tech, and all kinds of others whose names I don't know. I met dozens of them yesterday, though, and they were all quite happy and proud to have been involved in the project that worked out so well. So I hope you enjoyed the story. While we were talking, hopefully I remembered to put some stuff up on the screen to illustrate what I'm talking about. And questions, comments, as always, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.